There are moments in a performance that no one plans for. Not the director, not the writer, not the actor themselves. Moments when the line between what is being played and what is actually happening becomes so thin that the people in the room stop being crew members and become witnesses. When the camera is rolling but what it is capturing is no longer a performance in any conventional sense, it is simply a person in the middle of something real, and the apparatus of filmmaking is present by accident rather than design. The people who were on the set of The Crazy Ones on the afternoon of the 14th of October 2013 have described what they witnessed in different ways, using different words, arriving at different formulations of what happened and what it meant. But they all describe the same moment, a scene that was supposed to end and did not. A man who was supposed to stop when the director called cut and did not stop. And the particular quality of the silence that followed, not the silence of something gone wrong, but the silence of something gone very right in a way that no one had prepared for. This is the story of that afternoon, of Robin Williams and the scene that would not end. Of the things that are visible in a performance when the boundary between a character and the person playing the character becomes, for a moment, impossible to locate. And of the letter that a camera operator named James Whitfield wrote in August 2014, 6 days after Robin Williams died, to no one in particular, a letter that he has shared with a handful of people since and that contains, in its final paragraph, what may be the most accurate description of what was happening in that room on that October afternoon that anyone has yet managed to produce. But to understand what James Whitfield saw through his camera on the 14th of October, 2013, you have to understand what Robin Williams was doing in the autumn of 2013, and what he was carrying into that rehearsal room every day, and why the scene that was supposed to end did not. Robin Williams had returned to television in 2013 with a particular combination of eagerness and anxiety that the people close to him recognized as characteristic of his most significant creative periods. The CBS comedy series The Crazy Ones was, on the surface, a network sitcom, the kind of vehicle that a veteran performer takes when the economics of a career require it. The kind of project that the entertainment press describes as a return to form, and that the performer themselves sometimes regards with the private ambivalence of a person who knows the difference between a return to form and a return to the medium that will have them. But Robin Williams was not ambivalent about The Crazy Ones. He had read the pilot script and responded to it with a specificity of enthusiasm that his manager, Marcia Garces, later described as different from his ordinary professional excitement. The character he was playing, Simon Roberts, a brilliant and mercurial advertising executive whose creative genius was inseparable from his emotional volatility, was the kind of role that Robin Williams had always been drawn to. A person whose extraordinary public gifts were generating a private cost that the character himself could not fully see. Simon Roberts was, in other words, a character that Robin Williams understood from the inside. He came to the set every day with the particular energy that his castmates came to recognize as his working mode: enormous, generative, constantly finding new angles on the material, occasionally exhausting, always alive. He was funny in the ways the script required him to be funny, and funnier in the ways it did not. The improvisations that spilled out of him during takes, producing material that the writers incorporated into subsequent episodes, the writers admitting freely that they were barely keeping up with where Robin was going. But Sarah Michelle Gellar, who played his daughter in the series, observed something in Robin's work during those months that was not immediately obvious to everyone on the set. She observed that the moments when Robin was most fully committed, not the funny moments, not the improvised moments, but the moments when the character was most seriously engaged with something real, were the moments when Robin himself was quietest off stage. The energy and the stillness were not disconnected. They were the same thermometer, measuring the same temperature from different ends. What the character Simon Roberts was going through in the autumn of 2013, the specific emotional territory the scripts were navigating, was terrain that had a precise correspondent in Robin Williams' interior. life. A man at the height of his professional visibility, who was privately uncertain about almost everything. A man whose gifts were undeniable and whose relationship with those gifts was, at a depth that the performance could only partially reach, complicated in ways he had not finished working out. The scene, scheduled for October 14, was not, by the standards of the show, exceptional. It was a medium-length scene between Simon Roberts and his daughter, set in his office at the advertising agency. The scene required Robin Williams' character to break down not dramatically, not in the performed way of someone acting grief, but in the specific, restrained way of a man who has been holding something together for a long time and finds, in an ordinary moment with his daughter, that he cannot hold it any longer. It was good material. It was the kind of material Robin Williams was known to be able to execute with precision and power. What happened when he executed it was something else. The setup took the usual time. The set, a recreation of a large corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at a painted Los Angeles skyline, a desk and 2 chairs. The accumulated props of a creative executive's working space was dressed and lit. The blocking was confirmed. The technical run-through completed. Robin Williams came to the set from his trailer at approximately 2 in the afternoon. He had been quieter than usual that morning, a quietness that his assistant director, a woman named Carol Park, noted in her personal journal that evening as different from his ordinary between-scene stillness. Focused, she wrote, like he'd already been doing the scene in his head for a while. The first take began at 2:14 p.m. Robin Williams played the scene with technical flawlessness. Through the opening section, the dialogue that established the scene's context, the specific interaction with his scene partner that set up what was coming. His performance in the opening section was the performance of a man who knew exactly where the scene was going and was managing the distance between the surface and the depth with the skill of someone who had been doing this for decades. And then they reached the moment in the scene where Simon Roberts breaks, and Robin Williams did not manage the distance. What James Whitfield, operating camera B from the right side of the set, saw through his viewfinder in the next 3 minutes was something he has struggled to describe accurately in the years since. The character broke, as the script required, but what broke was not contained by the character. It went further, or rather, it went deeper into a place that the character, Simon Roberts, did not have access to. A place that belonged to Robin Williams himself, the specific emotional territory that the character had been mapping, without either of them fully realizing how close the map was coming to the actual landscape. Robin Williams' face in those 3 minutes, according to James Whitfield's letter, was the face of a man who had lost track of where he was. Not the face of a person acting the loss of self-awareness, the actual face of a person for whom the normal boundaries of controlled experience had, temporarily, simply dissolved. He was in the scene, and he was somewhere else simultaneously, somewhere that the camera could reach, but that the script had not written and the director had not directed. The director, a woman named Pam Fryman, who had worked with Robin Williams across multiple projects and understood his range better than almost anyone in the room, said, "Cut," at the moment the script called for it. Robin Williams did not stop. The silence on the set was the silence that falls when a room full of professionals encounters something that falls outside their professional vocabulary. Pam Fryman did not say, "Cut again." She looked at James Whitfield, whose camera was still rolling. James Whitfield looked back at her through the frame. Neither of them moved. Carol Park, the assistant director, later wrote in her journal, "I have been on sets for 11 years. I have seen actors lose themselves in material. I have seen genuine emotion produce extraordinary takes. This was different from all of those. This was not an actor finding the truth of a scene. This was a man finding something that was true before the scene existed, and the scene happened to be where he found it." The scene partner, the actress playing Robin's daughter, had finished her dialogue. She held her position, watching Robin Williams continue in the scene after the material had ended. Her face, visible in camera A's frame for the duration, is the face of a person watching someone and being uncertain whether to intervene or whether intervening would be the wrong thing. She did not intervene. No one did. Robin Williams continued for approximately 90 seconds after Pam Fryman said cut. The continuation was not dialogue. It was not additional performance in any scripted sense. It was the residue of what had happened in the scene, moving through him as it needed to move, following its own timeline rather than the production schedule. And then it ended. Not abruptly, it dissolved, the way certain kinds of intensity dissolve when they have finished their work, returning the person to the surface they had been below. Robin Williams blinked. He looked at the set around him, the desk, the painted windows, the crew standing in their positions. He said, quietly, "I'm sorry. For a moment, I forgot where I was." No one on the set spoke. Carol Park, the assistant director, was the first to move. She walked across the set and placed her hand on Robin Williams' shoulder. She did not say anything. He looked at her. She held her position for a moment, then nodded once and stepped back. Pam Fryman called the set closed for the day. The crew packed down in a quiet that James Whitfield later described as different from ordinary end-of-day quiet, a collective agreement to hold what had happened without immediately converting it into the language of production, of scheduling, of what came next. Robin Williams left the set at approximately 4 in the afternoon. His driver took him home. His assistant, who was with him in the car, reported later that he did not speak during the journey. He looked out the window. He was, she said, simply present in the car, in a way that was different from the performed composure of someone processing something difficult, genuinely present, quiet, as if whatever had happened on the set had left him in a place of unusual stillness. He came back the next day. He came back the day after that, and the day after that, through the remaining episodes of the season. The performances he gave in the weeks following October 14 were, by the consensus of the people who worked with him, among the finest work of his television career, not because of the intensity of the October 14 take, not because of the dissolution of the boundary, but because of what that dissolution seemed to have deposited on the other side, a quality of access, a willingness to be in the scene without the armor of technique that even the most committed performers tend to keep on, the small, managed distance that makes a performance controllable. James Whitfield continued operating Camera B for the remainder of the season. He watched Robin Williams work from behind the viewfinder with the attention of someone who has seen something specific happen through a particular lens, and who understands, without being able to fully articulate it, what they saw and what it meant. He did not speak about October 14 while the series was in production. He did not speak about it after the series ended. He filed the footage, as he filed all footage, and moved to the next project, carrying what he had seen in the way that people carry things they have not yet found the right words for. The Crazy Ones was canceled by CBS in May 2014 after one season. The cancellation was not unexpected. The ratings had been inconsistent, the critical reception mixed. The particular alchemy of a network comedy had not quite cohered. Robin Williams took the news with the equanimity of someone who had been through the cycles of the entertainment industry long enough to understand that cancellation was not a verdict but a business decision. He had other projects in development. There was talk of films, of a return to stand-up, of the several creative directions that his imagination was perpetually generating. He was, by the accounts of people who saw him in the early summer of 2014, working through the period after the series with the forward momentum that had always been his default relationship with the future. Robin Williams died on the 11th of August 2014. The shock of his death was felt in the particular way that a sudden and unexpected loss is felt a disorientation, a gap in the world where something had been, the specific confusion of encountering information that the mind cannot initially locate in any known category of experience. James Whitfield was at home in his apartment in Los Angeles when he heard. He sat for a long time without moving. Then, he went to his desk, and he wrote a letter. He addressed it to no one. He did not know who should receive what he was going to say. He only knew that he needed to say it, because he had been carrying it since the 14th of October, 2013, and the weight of it had become, in the absence of Robin Williams, suddenly different, not heavier exactly, but more specific, more insistent, demanding to be put into words, before the words became impossible to find. He wrote for 2 hours. He described October 14 with the precision of a person whose professional training had given him the habit of accurate observation, the time, the lighting setup, the position of camera B, the point in the scene where the boundary dissolved. He described what he saw through the viewfinder. He described the 90 seconds after Pam Fryman said, "Cut." He described Robin Williams' face as carefully as he could, in full awareness that the description was inadequate to what the face actually held. And then he wrote the final paragraph. He has shared the letter with a small number of people since other crew members from The Crazy Ones, a journalist who was preparing a retrospective, a close friend. The letter has not been published. The final paragraph, which the people who have read it tend to quote from memory because it is the kind of sentence that lodges itself, reads as follows. What I saw that afternoon was not a performance. I want to be precise about this. I have operated cameras on film sets for 14 years, and I have seen many performances, including many great ones, and I know what a performance looks like through a viewfinder, even when the performance is extraordinary. What I saw on October 14 was a man who found something that was true before the scene existed, and who stayed in it longer than the scene required. Because it was true, and because being in something true is different from being in something performed, and the difference is that you don't want to leave. He lost himself, and he found himself in the same moment, and both of them were real. And that is not something I expected to see through a camera, and I am grateful that I did. The take from the 14th of October, 2013, was never used in the series. The production selected a different take, one of the earlier ones, technically accomplished, emotionally precise, entirely appropriate to the episode's requirements. The October 14 take exists in the archive. It is not available publicly. The people who have seen it describe it in terms that converge on the same essential observation, that what is visible in Robin Williams' face during the 90 seconds after cut is something that cannot be replicated by any technical means available to the craft of performance, because it was not produced by technique. Carol Park still works in television production. She still keeps a personal journal. The entry for the 14th of October, 2013, is the longest entry in any of her journals from that decade. She has never shared it publicly, but has read from it on one occasion, at a memorial gathering for Robin Williams, held by the crew of The Crazy Ones in the autumn of 2014. The reading lasted 4 minutes. No one in the room spoke afterward for an extended period. Sarah Michelle Gellar spoke about Robin Williams in the months after his death, with the specificity of someone who had worked alongside something extraordinary and was still working out what it had been. She described his quality of presence, the way he could be entirely in a scene and entirely available to what was actually happening in the room simultaneously, the specific generosity of a performer who never treated a scene as his alone. She did not describe October 14 specifically in any interview, but she was on the set that afternoon. She was the scene partner who held her position after Pam Fryman said cut. And in one interview, asked what she remembered most clearly about working with Robin Williams, she said, "The day the scene didn't end. I'll remember that for the rest of my life. Not what it looked like, what it felt like to be in the room. What it felt like to be in the room." That is the thing that James Whitfield was trying to describe in his letter, and that Carol Park was trying to describe in her journal entry, and that Pam Fryman was trying to describe when she made the decision not to say cut again and to let the camera run. A man who forgot where he was, who forgot, for 90 seconds on the afternoon of the 14th of October, 2013, that he was performing, who was somewhere that was real and did not want to leave it yet, who came back to the surface of the set and the crew and the painted windows and the production schedule with the particular quality of someone returning from a place that mattered, who said, "I'm sorry. For a moment I forgot where I was, and who meant it, and who came back the next day, and the day after that, and gave, in the weeks that followed, what James Whitfield and Carol Park and Pam Fryman and Sarah Michelle Gellar all describe as the finest sustained television performance they had witnessed from any actor in any production they had worked on. Because what October 14 had cost Robin Williams the temporary dissolution of the boundary, the 90 seconds after cut, the stillness in the car on the way home, was also what it had given him. Access to the place that the performance had always been trying to reach, and the courage, or perhaps only the exhaustion of maintaining the distance, to simply be there, without the armor, without the management, just there, in the scene, in the truth, for as long as the truth needed him to stay. That is the story of the last rehearsal, of the scene that would not end until it had finished what it had come to do, of the man who forgot where he was and found, in the forgetting, exactly where he had always been trying to get to.